these wonderful, amazing practitioners and doctors and scientists, we don't want to wait till those symptoms arise. So we want to start being more in tune with our bodies. This is just to be educated, to be aware. We can lessen that viral load is by doing all the strategies and the tools that I'll be sharing with you, and really effective in trapping the virus so it doesn't go down. Why am I doing this? Is it just because somebody said it, or does it actually make sense? Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Whole Wellness Method video. I am Lida Sportel at the upcoming lidashealing.com and founder of the Whole Wellness Method. And in this video, I want to continue our discussion on getting through the coronavirus crisis with you. And specifically, I want to follow up on the previous video that we talked about the whole discussion on the coronavirus, how it enters into our bodies, and what it is that we want to do to protect ourselves from that. In this particular video, I want to discuss with you what determines how severe the infection can be. So if the virus does enter your body, what are the factors that can determine how serious this can be, or how mild and light it can also be? And given the information that I'm going to share with you, we are going to extrapolate some strategies, if you will, that we can apply so that we can make this more of a increase the probabilities that this is a mild and light situation if you do come in contact with the virus, and that it doesn't become a severe infection. So that's kind of my goal here, to really use all the tools that we've got, that natural medicine is giving us, and all the information that I'm getting from these wonderful, amazing practitioners and doctors and scientists, and my own personal experience and clinical knowledge, to be able to make this something that doesn't have to be so scary. Okay, so let's discuss now. First of all, I did mention that, I think, in the previous video, about how the virus enters our body. And there's mainly two routes. One is through the respiratory tract, and that's the more common way that it gets into our body. The other one is through the GI tract, and that one is more of a recent realization and discovery that that also is a way that the virus can get in. And I've heard that if you are having symptoms like stomach aches and cramps and other digestive symptoms, that you do want to still check in with your doctor and get tested, because there are that those symptoms have been actually shown. In some cases, it doesn't mean it's necessarily the coronavirus, but in some cases it has been linked with the coronavirus infection. So it then turns into fevers and the other symptoms that we're more familiar with. But in some cases, it starts with digestive symptoms, and then it turns into the fevers and the coughing and all these different symptoms that we're more familiar with. Now, none of what I'm saying is medical advice. None of what I'm saying is to diagnose, to treat, or to cure. And I don't need to say these disclaimers every time, but I do want to make sure that you know that it's just information, it's just education that I'm bringing you. So make sure you consult with your doctor about this. But the thing is, there is this secondary way of the virus getting into our bodies. And so we are going to discuss this on a separate video regarding the GI tract, how it enters through that process, and what we can do to protect ourselves if that is the case. But first, I want to focus on the respiratory, which is the more common one, and I want to discuss the situation when we've talked in the previous video how we got about 5 days before the virus gets down into the lungs. So I want to discuss that a little further, and I also want to discuss that don't wait until there's the dry cough, because at that point things what Dr. Klinghardt and some other doctors that are really very, very familiar with what's going on and are doing really deep research into this, they're saying that once the dry cough starts showing up, that the virus has already progressed and has multiplied in your body quite a bit. And so we don't want to wait till those symptoms arise. So we want to start being more in tune with our bodies. We want to start taking caution and action before we start to get those more intense symptoms. And dry coughing might seem like nothing important in other situations, but with what's going on right now, I would be a little more careful with that. So again, none of that is to scare you. None of that is to raise fear. This is just to be educated, to be aware, to be knowledgeable, and so that we can take action. Okay? So this is about empowering you, not making you feel scared. So now that I got that out of the way, what I want to talk about is what determines how, severe that infection might be. And so Dr. Michael Murray has a really wonderful article that I'm drawing some of this information from, that I will be sharing with you in this video and in the next video. And that is regarding, first of all, he's saying that one of the main factors that can determine how severe this infection can be is the viral load, meaning that were you exposed to a small amount of the virus, or were you exposed to a larger amount of the virus? So it actually does matter. It actually does matter if you were, let's say, there was a few particles of the virus on a surface, and you touched that surface, and then you touched your mouth or nose or eyes, and that's how the virus got in, versus if you were exposed to somebody, coughing, and then all those droplets going straight into your respiratory tract, or you are around somebody who's sick with the virus, or healthcare workers who are around people who are infected with the virus all the time. So it does make a difference in terms of how much your body has to process. So if your body has to process a little bit of virus, it's easier, obviously, versus if your body has to process a lot of it of virus. So now with that is also to understand what can we do, because if we do get exposed to a higher load of virus particles, then the way that we can lessen that viral load is by doing all the strategies and the tools that I'll be sharing with you to lessen that viral load. And like we said, there are a few days that we have before the virus makes its way down to the lungs. So if there are ways that things like I'll be sharing, like irrigating your nose, spraying your throat, keeping your throat moist. So that was the number one reason of what could make this more of a severe illness versus going through it mildly. Another factor that Dr. Michael Murray also talks about is how easy is it for the virus to go from your nose or from your throat or from anywhere in your respiratory tract down into the lungs. How easy is it for the virus to make its way down? So what we're going to be discussing in the next few videos is how to make it extra hard for the virus to make its way down. And thankfully, there are many different tools to do that. But one of the things that I'm going to be sharing with you that Dr. Murray is talking about is to really make your mucous membranes really strong and really effective in trapping the virus so it doesn't go down, and using our own body's natural mechanisms that it has in place already to use and to leverage on these mechanisms that our body has so that we don't allow the virus to go down into the lungs. So yes, this whole virus sounds very scary and this whole situation is concerning. But if we act in a smart way and we use the tools that our body already has and we boost them and we don't sabotage them, then there's a lot more hope than what we think there is. So that's what he's really talking about, is how can we make it harder for the virus to make its way down into the lungs? How can we boost those mucous membranes that are surrounding our throat, our nasal cavity, our sinuses, our trachea, our bronchi? Because once it gets into the lungs, there's not so much protection there. And the other concern is that I've talked about in the previous video as well, is that once the virus gets into the lungs, the problem is that not only the problem isn't only the virus at that point that starts infecting the lung cells, it's also our own immune system, because our own immune system can get super aggressive about fighting that virus in an effort to protect you, in an effort to save you from that virus. But it kind of goes a little bit overboard. And that is what we are finding is actually more of the problem, is that the immune system goes so aggressively to attack that virus that it creates the cytokine storm, which creates so much inflammation that the body can't handle it, that the lungs fill up in that fluid, and then that's where, the concern begins with not being able to breathe and feeling like you're drowning and all these different things that people are talking about. So we really want to, again, leverage on, first of all, how do we make it hard for the virus to go down into the lungs? And if the virus does make its way down to the lungs, how do we, first of all, block the virus from attaching into the lung cells? And secondly, how do we make our immune system not overreact? How do we quench a little bit some of that cytokine storm? So you see how many different angles there are to this, how many different approaches there are, and different stages, if you will, depending on where the virus is. So all of that is to say, there is hope, there are tools, there are ways we can figure this out. So that's what I'm going to be offering you. And again, we don't want the immune system to be overreacting, but at the same time, we don't want it to be underreacting. So we want the immune system to be quick and effective. But we don't want it to be too much. We don't want it to be too little. So while I am going to be giving you tools to support your immune system and to boost your immune system, and everybody seems to be talking about boosting immune system, including myself, at the same time, there's not much talk about how to quench the hyperactive immune system that is creating the super high inflammatory response called the cytokine storm. We also need to be talking about that, right? So, and the other piece that I don't hear a lot of people talk about, thankfully Dr. Muri has brought this to our attention, is even before the immune system gets involved, how do we get this virus to be trapped into our own mucous membranes so it doesn't make its way down to the lungs? So we don't even need to worry about it infecting our lungs and it causing the cytokine storm. So what are the steps way before that? So I hope this whole thing made sense, and you also understand what we are going to be talking about next, because for me, it's very important to understand whatever I'm suggesting to my clients, whatever I'm suggesting to my family, or I am following myself. I always like to understand why. Why am I doing this? Is it just because somebody said it? or does it actually make sense? So that's what I'm offering you, things that actually make sense and that they're using our own body's natural wisdom and science. So I hope you found this helpful, and I will follow up with more information on this, and next we're going to talk about the mucous membranes and how to boost those and support those as a first line of defense. Leaving you in whole wellness. Bye-bye.